any questions about these dates, please feel free to get in touch. But I'm anxious to hand over to our guest panelist, David Goodfellow, who is from Nordex, our newest member, and David's actually going to present a few slides to introduce himself. David, if you're here and you want to switch your microphone on, you should be able to speak to everybody. So,
yes, I've done.
Okay, let me just make you a presenter. Okay, so that should work. If any people in the audience have any problem with audio or anything like that, please just mention it in the question box. But David, over to you.
So thank you. I mean, clearly I'm going to introduce myself, but more interesting for most people, I guess, would be the company, what we're doing, and you know, where we are, and how we see our training needs. So hopefully you can all see a heading slide now. My mouse isn't giving me what I want. There we go. So I'm going to take you through who we are, whereabouts we are in the world, and sort of what we do and why we want to, why we've chosen to join the GWO, and what our hopes and challenges are within the GWO. So who are we? We are the Nordex Group, which is Nordex Acciona as a logo, although we're more and more just relying on the Nordex name these days. So Nordex as an organisation was founded in Denmark in '85, following various prototyping that had been going on turbines for about 3 years previous to that. Acciona as an organisation was set up within the Acciona Energia Group as an organisation to manufacture wind turbines, so it's Acciona Wind Power, and both those organisations have been relatively successful in the industry, but recognised back in 2016 that there was rationalisation going on in the industry and only the large players were likely to survive. So in 2016, Nordex and Acciona merged their operations, and since then we're pretty much at the 2.5 megawatt sort of level. Then we've developed 3 megawatt, and then 4, and we're now just launched 5 megawatt class machines. So I won't go through all the rest of that detail. And this is interspersed with lovely arty pictures of our wind turbines, so you'll get a good impression of the sort of area we operate in. So where are we? Well, in terms of our manufacturing facilities, we have plants in most continents of the world, and you can see there a mixture of nacelle factories, blade factories, and tower factories. Clearly those factories will also do panel manufacturing, things like that as well, but that's the sort of the key elements. And then where do we operate in terms of installation? So as you can see, we've got a fair number of countries coloured in. In fact, there are other countries that have we're moving into at the moment, like the Ukraine, for example, where that hasn't made it onto that map yet. In terms of installations, we've got more than 25 gigawatts installed and operational. 7 of that's in the Americas. Asia Pacific and Africa is 5, and the bulk is in Europe, 13 gigawatts, of which Northern Europe is 4 gigawatts, Germany is 4 gigawatts, the Med area is 3 gigawatts, and Spain is 2 gigawatts. So quite a strong implementation in Europe, but also pretty active in a lot of non-European territories. So what do we do? As well as manufacturing, of course, we're a project developer in certain countries where it makes sense to do so. So we're one of the leading developers in France. We're also active in developing projects in India. And then we have a logistics function, so all of those components that we make have got to be got to sites. We will quite happily take on balance of plant work, so civil works and electrical infrastructure, and then we do installation and commissioning of the turbines, and then generally stay on with those turbines in a service capacity. So that's a slide showing our product range, but I think I've pretty much introduced that already. So in terms of what we do health and safety wise, we have a very much a cultural basis for our approaches to safety behaviours. So some of the things that we do to try and develop good safety culture with our people are safety contacts at the beginning of any significant meetings. We have safety walks and talks by managers, so this is discussion based, not checklist based. Every person in the organisation gets an annual safety refresher from their direct line manager to demonstrate management leadership in safety. We have a number of campaigns where we use videos, online surveys, as many different media as we can to keep people engaged. At the moment, we're running a large positive poster campaign, so we're not putting up pictures of people who've been maimed and injured, because our surveys of the workforce suggested that the guys thought that safety was actually fairly well run within the business, so we didn't need a shock campaign. But what we're doing is reinforcing protective behaviour. So, for example, a poster that shows somebody's hands playing the guitar, and the message is protect your hands at work for all those precious moments outside of work. And the other thing that's worth mentioning is that we do a lot of internal technical trainings, and we do have our own facilities to produce training videos and training materials on those topics. So, why GWO? And you'll see the safety poster logo and campaign creeping in at the bottom here. Safety is not a program, it's about heart. So why GWO? Well, I mean, for us, when we started looking at it last year, we were the only leading turbine manufacturer who weren't part of the GWO, and yet we're in an environment where convergence of national schemes and GWO standards has taken place. So the schemes that we've relied on have typically turned into GWO standards, and there's partly because of that, there's been an increasing adoption of GWO standards across the industry, and for the same reason, a lot of our Nordex people were starting to get certificates on them that were GWO stamped. And you couple that with the fact that, I mean, we work in a very multinational industry, and there's an ever increasing amount of cross-border working going on, particularly with the market forces in Europe having meant that typically each country has been in the doldrums for a year or two while the markets settle out, or they're waiting for a new financial scheme to come along. So typically people have been moving from one country to another for a few years, then on to another, and so on. So portability of certificates cross-border has been important. So opportunities for us and challenges, well, we have a great opportunity to share our existing knowledge and experience with other members, but clearly also to share their knowledge with us and to learn from them. Again, yes, I said qualifications will be recognised across borders, and to collaborate with the GWO to further develop training standards. Challenges, we have a training academy in Hamburg and an offshoot of that in the UK, and we have to work out now how we align the training centre, both physically and in terms of delivery, with GWO. Clearly what we want to do is bring our supply chain with us. Obviously in a lot of cases, supply chain is the same for ourselves and our competitors, because generally we tend to use the same, for example, organisations to construct turbines. But there will be a certain amount of our supply chain who we will now be saying we would prefer you to have GWO certificates, or even we would require you to, depending on whether it's appropriate or not. And then finally, one of the challenges that we've got is how to manage somebody who's maybe done a GWO training in one country and learnt about the legal context of that training. How do we top that up as they move to another country? Obviously they don't need the whole training, but how do we top up the legal framework aspect of it? Okay, so I mean that's all I've prepared. Does anybody have any questions?
Thanks, David. I have some questions, if I can throw in. It's Ralph here. One of the things we wanted you to be able to explain to people listening in is, as a new member with a big workforce in dozens and dozens of countries, what does a new member organisation actually do when it communicates the fact that you're now part of GWO, that you'll be looking to essentially, audit the level of GWO training or otherwise across your global network? What steps are you taking? What processes are you engaged in that?
Okay, so one or two questions all wrapped up in one there.
Yeah.
So first one, in terms of communication, we've shared that out on our corporate website. So everybody will have, who's been onto the intranet over a week or so, will have seen that news up there. We formed a project team consisting of myself and our two divisional HSE heads, who are looking at how we fully integrate with the GWO. So, for example, we're making decisions on who sits on training committees and what's another compliance type committee.
Yes.
And the first sort of real sort of big piece of work is actually understanding where we are. I mean, we operate in around about 35 different countries where we have organisational activity. So what we've done is created a questionnaire for each country based around the GWO existing training standards, and sent that out to each country to try and find out whether GWO is even sort of known and accepted, or whether it's sort of we request it, whether we absolutely demand it. Do we actually train our own people to GWO standards in those countries, or indeed is there a specific country requirement which stops us training to GWO, which can happen. So we're at the moment, I mean, we only joined in April. We're still in the process of collecting all that information. But the plan then is to do a gap analysis and look at where it's appropriate to move over to GWO standards. So that'll be a combination of where the law and the culture of the country allow it, but also where the training provision is available.
Yeah. And the other thing about working in such a multinational organisation is the existence of local training in those countries. We talked about it earlier on. What does it mean to a business like Nordex to see the growth of GWO training providers, like that slide we had earlier on with 14 new training providers in multiple different countries? What benefit does that deliver to a global company like yours?
Well, I mean, when we move into a country, there's two phases to it. The first phase is that we'll move in on a project-based approach, so construction side of things. And at that point, to be blunt, it's not too important, because an awful lot of the workers who come in who will need that sort of training, who are going to be involved in building the turbines and commissioning them, will be generally coming in from other countries, and we would expect them to bring GWO or equivalent training with them. However, we then develop a service organisation in that country, and for us the ideal would be if there's a local service provider who we can lean on to provide the training for our guys there.